We are here at the Optimum Theater in Bethpage on Long Island, where today the two candidates who are running to fill the congressional seat left vacant by expelled Congressman George Santos are here for their one and only debate ahead of Tuesday's special election. Thank you for joining us. I'm Rich Barrabi. Let's welcome to the stage the candidates themselves. You did say in 2022, quote, "I kicked ICE out of Nassau County." You're referring to your time as county executive. Where do you stand today? What's the how on SALT? Everybody, if you represent New York, Long Island, you'd be crazy to say, leave it as it is, right? It's not popular, but what's the how? How do you get it done?
You know, I have a great skills by working with people, communicating with everyone.
Right, very quickly, and then we want to move on.
What?
I said very quickly. I can't get a word in here.
I didn't hear you, I'm sorry.
That's okay. Let's move on. It is 9 o'clock, and that means the polls have just closed and the votes are in. Welcome to Vote 2023 election coverage. I'm Rich Barrabi. All right, breaking news right now. A major ruling from the Supreme Court on abortion rights. The High Court just moments ago overturned the landmark Roe versus Wade decision. Kevin, Congressman Santos is actually speaking right now. He spoke to reporters earlier saying he would take to the House floor by special order. It would not be a resignation speech. He said he plans to make it difficult on anyone who wants to expel him from Congress. Meanwhile, just moments ago, Congressman Anthony D'Esposito, Congressman Nick LaLota were on the House floor. And Congressman D'Esposito, you put forth a motion to expedite the vote to expel Congressman Santos. Tell us about what's next.
That's correct, Rich.
Remember the blue wave? It swept across the House of Representatives 2 years ago, washing the gavel away from the GOP and into the hands of Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats. But that blue wave hit a big red flood wall at the U.S. Senate. Well, Tara, George Santos did not wait for the final votes to be cast. He shook a few hands, put on his overcoat, and he left the House chamber. His fate had already been sealed. He was doing the math, and it was clear that more than 2/3 of the House were indeed going to vote for his expulsion, and that's exactly what happened. He walked down the U.S. Capitol steps into a car, and that is the last of Congressman George Santos. This event actually kicked off with remarks from the U.S. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, who focused his short speech on bipartisanship. The two county executives and the governor also said they are willing to work across the aisle, but it was very clear here today that there are several key issues where the gap is very wide. In Woodbury, Rich Barrabi, News 12, Long Island.
Right.
Hey, you know what? Let me break in here, Doug, because, hey, let's spin this camera around. We're now getting numbers in these congressional races in Suffolk County, okay? 85% of the vote is now in Suffolk County. So perhaps there was a big file drop in Yaphank. We got a lot of numbers. Nick LaLota, 55%, 147,000 plus votes. Bridget Fleming now at 45%. Republicans had felt confident in this race. So again, that vote is taking place at 10:30 tomorrow morning. And the big question is, who will be here tomorrow? It's a Friday. Many members may leave town early. And if that happens, what does that do to the vote count? Remember, you got to have 2/3 of the House to vote to expel. It's all going to come down to a numbers game. And at this point, no one is sure whether or not George Santos will be a member of Congress come next week. We're in Washington. Rich Barrabi, News 12. Take a look at the numbers. Right now, you've got a 50-50 Senate, essentially. 48 Democrats, yes, but the two independents caucus with them, so you've got a split. The vice president can break the tie, but for this type of vote, you need 60 votes. Democrats aren't going to find 10 Republicans to vote with them on this. What about getting rid of the filibuster? Well, that is not going to happen either, because two Democrats, Joe Manchin of West Virginia, Kyrsten Sinema of Arizona, they've already said they will not allow that to happen. This is an article in Axios. Democrats lack the votes to end the filibuster. So how do you move forward if you're someone who's saying, hey, we've got to codify abortion rights at the federal level right now? Go back to the map. It all becomes about the midterms. Again, 50-50 Senate, huge wedge issue. Perhaps this is the issue Democrats decide to run on, but they would have to essentially take their 50 votes right now, add 2 Democrats at least to the total, get to 52, and these 2 Democrats, by the way, would then also have to be willing to get rid of the filibuster. A lot of moving parts, a lot of numbers as the debate rages on across the country. We had been hearing all morning long that this was going to be a close vote. Even those who had hoped to expel George Santos and say, listen, it's going to be a tight one. After all, he had already defeated 2 previous expulsion attempts, and many Republicans had real concerns about the precedent this would set, considering that Santos has yet to be convicted of any crime. But as the votes came in, it became clear to even Santos that he would be ousted from the House. He left before the final vote was even cast.
The chair announces to the House that in light of the expulsion of the gentleman from New York, Mr. Santos, the whole number of the House is now 434.
With that, the House of Representatives voted to expel one of its members for just the 6th time in history. Admitted serial liar George Santos, indicted on federal charges and condemned by a damning House Ethics Committee report, has been ousted by his colleagues. What message does it send to Long Islanders and his constituents?
Rich, I think that, as I've said before, this is a sad day. It's a sad day for this institution, and it's a sad day for the American people. The fact that, yes, a new precedent had to be set because someone lied and frauded their way to the House of Representatives. I think people who read the report saw that the proof in the report was enough that his actions cast a shadow on this institution.
It was the New York congressional delegation that pushed hardest for expulsion, but more than 100 of Santos's fellow Republicans still voted against it, citing what many called a dangerous new precedent of expelling an elected official who has not been convicted of a crime and potentially overturning the will of the voters who elected Santos. But Congressman Nick LaLota argued the vote to expel actually restores election integrity.
The voters were defrauded, and this expulsion provision today was unwinding that fraudulent election.
When we spoke to Santos just before the historic vote, he seemed to anticipate what was about to take place.
It's goodbye, and you leave graciously, and you accept your faith, and you go on with your life.
Now, Santos spoke to us yesterday about what his future could entail. Of course, there are those federal charges. That has to be priority number 1 for him. He did tell us that he's received several job offers, although he wouldn't indicate exactly what those were. It is clear we have not heard the last of George Santos. We've just heard the last of him as a congressman. In Washington, Rich Barrabi, News 12.
Everybody's complaining about the roads. Absolutely everybody.
For 48 years, Joseph Sabia has operated his own auto shop. He says the state of our roads and the resulting damage to the cars and trucks he fixes are as bad as he's seen.
Our infrastructure here is falling apart, and our politicians just keep kicking the can down the road.
What does the picture of men building a sewer mean to you?
America once took pride in building out its infrastructure. Public works projects were used as a way to climb out of the Great Depression as part of FDR's New Deal.
And long after Depression is forgotten, these permanent improvements will remain as part of a better New York.
And as a tool to better connect our supply lines and improve accessibility during the Eisenhower administration.
The fulfillment of the promises made by these signs of an America designed for the transportation that serves it lies at the end of that road.
But in the years since, our infrastructure has been allowed to decay.
That bridge, built in 1904, and this one, 1958, are a disaster waiting to happen.
Aging bridges, pothole-plagued roads, sewers and drains unable to contend with 21st century superstorms, and new international competition pushing the boundaries of technology. It seems every president pledges their commitment to finally bringing our infrastructure into the next century.
Our infrastructure, 21st century infrastructure.
American infrastructure.
Bipartisan infrastructure.
But to borrow from another, the state of our infrastructure is not good. The American Society of Civil Engineers finds that nationwide, 43% of our roadways are in poor or mediocre condition, including 27% in New York, 34% in Connecticut, and 37% in New Jersey. In addition to that, 42% of all of our bridges are at least 50 years old, and more than 46,000 are considered structurally deficient. So how did we go from this to this?
I think that we have neglected and disregarded these challenges because it was easier to put it off, procrastinate, delay. We can't do it anymore.
Connecticut Senator Richard Blumenthal favors a go-big approach when it comes to tackling our nation's aging infrastructure. He says to delay would prove more costly and more dangerous in the long run.
Our infrastructure is like these bridges, a catastrophe waiting to happen. And the cost of failing to rebuild them is astronomical.
Most people we spoke with about this said, listen, set the politics aside. It's about common sense. If you had a leak in your roof, would you just leave it? No, you'd replace it if you could afford it. If your tires were bald, would you drive on them? Of course not. You'd get them replaced. So shouldn't the government do at least that and then some?
Politicians are at the heart of this mess, in my judgment.
But former Port Authority of New York and New Jersey Executive Director and CEO George Marlin says he's skeptical that the lawmakers of today have the vision or will necessary to get the job done.
The money was there, the vision was there, the political will was there. Those three things are now missing.
Ultimately, how do we fix this?
Well, in my judgment, what you need is for a governor or a mayor to appoint a visionary who is above the political fray and is given the authority to get something done and get those shovels in the ground.
In the meantime, only time will tell if our tires will soon be belting out a tune.
Tires on the pavement will sing, "Come on, America, the welcome mat is out."
Or crying out loud. Rich Barrabi, News 12.